So I want you to know, first and foremost, right up front, it wasn't my fault. We were at the old house. It really wasn't my fault. We were at the old house, my house that I grew up in, the homestead, and my lovely older brothers and sisters, I'm the younger by 4 or 5 years, were dutifully doing the dishes. You know, it was our job, that was our role, and they were doing in a loving manner with one another. I don't know what happened this time. Probably somebody didn't like that they were waiting for it to air dry, and so they kept on splashing water onto the dry pile. I don't know. You know, we always created new ways of kind of irritating one another. And so what happened was, you know, my brother and sister kind of started arguing, and the arguing escalated and kind of got into a little bit of a rumble and tumble that wasn't all that uncommon in my house. And, you know, they were teenagers about this time, and my brother was a pretty big, strong guy for his age at that time. And as they were wrestling and tussling, he grabbed her and slammed her against the wall and broke it into the wall. My sister was literally in the wall. And they were like, oh no. I don't know quite where I was at. I kind of remember seeing this. I was pretty young at the time. Mom was not home, Dad was not home, but instantly they both knew that they had done something terribly wrong, right? That this is not the way this was supposed to go. Mom is not going to be happy with this. And so they did what all good human beings do. On this gorgeous brown paper, it actually was really ugly wallpaper. I just remember it was, ugh. They took an orange towel and they pinned it up over top of this hole. Because if you can't see it, it's not there, right? And then they quickly finished the dishes because they were like, at least we're gonna get this done. And it was about an hour later. Mom walks in. Kitchen is the first door, the room that you come into. So you kind of come through the hallway entrance, and you're in the far end of the kitchen. That wall is all the way down there, and it takes my mom like 0.2 seconds. She knows, she probably knew it before she walked in the house. She has this mom radar. She sees that, goes ballistic. What in the world? What have you done? You know, I don't know what they got punished, but yeah, a big orange towel on a brown wall. This made perfect sense to them of going, this will make it better. We looked last week at ourselves, right? And all the different type of dimensions of ourselves. We have our actions that everybody sees. That's what sticks up out of the water. They can see that. But this series is inviting us to go kind of deeper into the person that's within us. You know, we're often aware of kind of our intention and motives, not necessarily all the things that are bound up in that. But, you know, to go deeper into our emotions, our attitudes, our beliefs, down deep into our desires, our values, our wounds, the good things and the bad things, all the things that kind of make us up. Of going, God's reach and desire to be at work in our life plummets all these depths. He's not just staying on top of the surface and going, look, I just want you to behave right. He goes, I want you to be right. I want to be that heart surgeon that comes into your life. But it takes courage for us to go, you know what? He can't do his work if I pretend it doesn't exist. If I go, you know what? I just kind of keep that stuff down there because I'm afraid of it, because I don't know what to do with it, or I have even repressed good things that ought to be brought out that are part of who I am, but because of kind of whatever's been around me, I've gone, I got to keep that away. And we let God stay out, or we keep God out of doing this deeper inner work. But the truth is that today is more than just about me as a person. that the present and our actions and the choices that we make and the ways that we behave are really a window into the past. Because I don't just kind of pop out and show up and go, hey, this is kind of who I am. We are all being molded and shaped, right? All throughout our lives, through the events, things that we've chosen, things that other people have chosen, just the happenstance of life. But nothing probably is as influential in shaping who we are as our family of origin. Whoever raised you, whether it was parents or guardians or grandparents or whatever combination that you have experienced, and your siblings, all of that has kind of come into play into shaping who you are. So if we're going to start talking about going, hey, look, we're going to let God kind of open up some things down in us. I'm going to kind of be honest with myself. Let the real me out so God can deal with me. Part of the question is to go, well, where did that come from? How did I get shaped? And the truth is that we have more than just a person within us. We have a family within us that goes, this is normal, right? You weirdos, you got weird things in your past, and I know it because I got weird things in my past. Your family in some way has kind of gone, this is what's normal. And what is strange and bizarre, besides just kind of doing weird Christmas pictures, right? As I told you this story, never occurred to me at whatever age that event happened that I went, putting somebody through a wall is a strange thing. That's just normal. That's just the way people are, right? I got shaped by that. I got formed by it. It makes us have assumptions about life, expectations. Usually we kind of think of the term assumptions as kind of like an idea that I have wrong that's kind of leads me to the wrong conclusion. But an assumption is also kind of an expectation of life, of just going, well, this is normal. This is right. This is acceptable. That's what I grew up with. That's what I expect. I didn't know any different. I thought everyone did dressed up in green and took pictures and sent that to people, right? And you go, no, as you find out. So there's kind of the quirky parts of this, but we want to talk about the parts from our families that really kind of have shaped these values, that influence our motives and our intentions, even in ways that we are not aware of. If you had asked me at a younger age, I'd have said, that meant nothing, that incident. I see it in a whole different light now. So what were the top 10 things from your family, right? We could talk about the top 10 commandments of God, his top 10 list. This is the way that I want you to be. Your family gave you 10 commandments. It may not have been written down. It may not have ever even been spoken. Maybe it did. Maybe it had catchphrases that you well know. They run inside your head. Or maybe it was just understood and shown. What did your family say about money? You better have money because that's the only way to be happy and secure. You better make sure you get a good enough job because if you don't, you are going to have a miserable life. If you have money, you are important. If you don't, you aren't. What did your family teach you? What did they say about conflict? Avoid it at all costs. How dare you raise your voice? You better not make me unhappy. Or you could be my family that went, wow, having World War III was just normal. That's just what we do. Isn't that the way people interact? Conflict is great. We always had it in our home. What did your family teach you about sex? I'm not talking about the birds and the bees. I'm talking about, we don't talk about that. That's whatever you do, don't have it happen, right? It's a bad thing. We're just gotta make sure you do it later. And that's the only way that we want to think about it and talk about it. It's okay for boys to hunt girls. Girls better be the good girl all the time. They're not allowed to think about that. Sex and marriage is going to be easy and perfect and wonderful, and it's going to be Disneyland every day of the week. What were you taught? What were you taught about grief? It's not good to be sad. That's something to get over. Come on, let's go. Be a grown-up. Let's move on. Life is busy. Come on, get past it. There is no room for you to be depressed. If you're depressed, there is something wrong with you. Anger. We handed it out like ice cream. Everybody gets an extra scoop. Or you were from a family like Eileen, anger was never allowed. Boy, has it been a clash of worlds between Eileen and me. I remember I came home from school. I was living with my mom. She had remarried to a guy that didn't get married until he was 50. He was a quiet accountant. He had a nice, quiet life. And then he married my mom, a tornado. And my mom and I got into it in the kitchen. And boom, the voices go up. He finally yells from the bathroom upstairs, "Would you be quiet? The whole neighborhood's going to hear you." What did you think I responded with? "Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to." We're finally communicating because this is what's normal. If you're angry, you've done something bad. How about your family? Family first. Oh, that's a deep value in this area, isn't it? It depends on what you mean by that, though, doesn't it? You better not cross the family. You don't need other friends. You've got family, and that satisfies all your needs. And don't look for anything else. You better keep your place in the family. You better not air the dirty laundry of the family. You better not let anybody know that there are any issues going on here, because there aren't. How about other people? If they don't look like you, you shouldn't be friends. They have a different color skin. You better not marry them. America is better than they are. That's fine that they exist, but they don't need to be here. May have not been quite that overt in your household, but don't tell me that you don't hear things like that. I have a saying that I picked up from my father that I said until I was 27, and I accidentally still say it because it's so hard to break the habit of it. I'm not going to say it because it's awful. And I said it for 27 years, never realizing what I was saying. It was just, well, that's what Dad said. And he didn't mean anything by it. It's just kind of a throwaway phrase. And it's a racial phrase, way back when. I never ever heard anybody else ever say it. It's not a common one. But it took me a long time. For a long time, I didn't know. And then I actually listened to my words. Would your family teach you about marriage? If you're not married, you aren't worth anything. If you're single, that means you're broken. The man gets to dominate. He's in control. And everybody else better kowtow to him. Success is where it's at. And you better succeed. Let's start combining some of these. Not just succeed for money, but you better succeed for the family name. You better not disgrace us. Because if you can come and succeed, then guess what? You're treated better than your brothers and sisters. I just went yesterday to a homecoming, a class reunion at college. I ran into Mr. Success. We said hello, he gave me his name. Oh yeah, I remember you. And then he went into a 15-minute diatribe about how successful he's been. Didn't ask me anything. It was really interesting. I'm glad for it. But yeah, success means that he's important. How about relationships? Don't trust people. People will hurt you. People are going to let you down. You better keep your circle really close. You don't ever be vulnerable. You don't let people in unless you are for sure. Let's combine it with marriage. Yeah, you better get married because, right, that's where the value is, but don't expect it to last. I'm telling you, everyone under 30 thinks that way. It's not the living together and the lack of commitment, it's marriage is what's wrong. It won't last. You know why? Because we went to no-fault divorce in 1970. And we've had generations of kids go, marriage doesn't mean anything. I've been hurt by that. Nobody told them. They figured this out for themselves. What did your family teach you? What is normal? What do you kind of go, I behave this way and I act this way because there are assumptions that I have down deep inside that I may not even be aware of that shape who I am. I can learn all the Bible verses. I can sing these songs. I can play K-Love. I can listen to sermons. But these assumptions just kind of are so deep down rooted. It took me 27 years to figure out I was using a racial slur that I never heard anybody else. This is not a common one. Or that violence is not normal. It was celebrated in my family. We would regale the tales of the violence in my home and the way my mother grew up. And the violence. Ha ha! Do you remember the time that our aunt threw a butcher knife at her husband? Missed him by 3 inches. Isn't that great? Do you realize when we figured out this was a bad thing? When Eileen started to hear the stories and I started regaling them to my kids. Hey, do you know what your Uncle Butch did? And she's like, that's awful. And I was like, yeah, she's right. But it was a point of pride in our household. Violence was the way it went. Yeah, I didn't grow up with abuse. I wasn't abused in any way, but violence was the way people interacted and handled conflict. And it goes back generations. Assumptions. Never even thought that not only was that incident not right, but that it was odd that we had so many holes in my grow-up household in the walls because somebody grabbed somebody else and jacked them up against the wall. I just thought that's the way it was. We have our assumptions, but then we have our secrets, don't we? These are, for some of us that have had really bad things. And you know what? I don't even want to go that far. It doesn't have to go that far. You don't have to come from a bad family, a bad circumstance to have deep secrets that you hold and you keep down in there. And it's your responsibility to keep those. And yet they influence you. And they change your behavior. You come to church, you accept Christ, you read scripture, you pray, and yet these things persist. Right? See, if we're going to let God do the deep work, we've got to first open ourselves up and say, here I am, for the good and the bad, God. This is what it is. Only then, it's not like he's on the outside and doesn't know, but then we participate. But as he opens us up, he's going to go, okay, you know what? We got to talk about where you came from, how you were shaped, how you were molded. Jesus put it this way. He says, if anyone comes to me and does not hate father and mother, wife and child, brother and sisters, yes, even their own life, such a person cannot be my disciple. I never knew it. My whole family was a disciple of Jesus because no. That's not what he means. This is hyperbole. You got to be careful with some of the statements of Jesus. He uses particular techniques of communication. And so he is exaggerating here. He's not going, you got to hate somebody, you got to despise your family. That's not where this is going. Oh man, my mom and my dad, they did terrible things. They didn't let me have an Xbox when I was growing up. I can't believe it. They said no to me. No, that's not what this is. He's talking about a deep level of loyalty that goes, you know what? I'm going to preserve the way it was. My loyalty to my family supersedes God's. And in doing that, you know what? I keep the secrets and I keep the assumptions. And I just keep this thing rolling. Jesus says, until you get down to this level where you have been shaped, where you go, this is what I think is normal in life, until you let me work at this level, you can't really be my disciple. You will never receive what I have to give for you because the roots will fight it. That's why emotionally unhealthy spirituality is a very shallow spirituality altogether. We've got to be doing all of this work. There's a technique for those of you who are going to be in the groups here this week called mapping. Where you kind of, you map out your family, and you really should go back a couple generations. We're individualists as Americans. We're like, I make my own decisions, right? I'm not affected by anybody. No. You're a whole conglomerate of a whole bunch of influences, and those influences go back further than you think. You think it's just your parents. It goes to your grandparents. There's a demon in my family's history. I know it because I feel it. I thank God that he rescued me. The anger and the rage and the violence, I would have been a very dangerous man. But Christ broke those chains. I can still feel it. And as we were raising and the little kids starting to raise, my prayer was, oh God, help them to get further away. Go down. Let them never even feel this. I know it. It lurks. It's controlled by Christ in me to some extent. I still got my issues there, right? But I look at my mom's family and just go, holy moly, I could have been that. I'm not everything I should be, and I hope my kids generationally go further, and they never know it at all. The purpose of this is for us to begin to understand and see. Rather than rely on a towel to cover it up and pretend there's no hole in the wall, this is normal, it's okay. I don't need to go back there. Either it's useless or you know what's lurking there and you're like, I don't want a ticket to that ride. I've been trying to escape this. Well, let me tell you what, you are not escaping it until you face it. I'm still facing it. I've had benchmarks along my life where it was kind of I just realized putting people through walls is a bad thing. We shouldn't do that. Doing this is about just helping us to see and to understand what were the relationships like? What was happening Where were their good connections? Where were their tense connections? Where was their violence? Where was their abuse? Where are people cut off in your life? I got it all. If you want to go that route, boy, I can lay down a whole bunch of trump cards, man. We are a bag full of cats. Now, please understand, this is not about going, it's not my fault, it's all their fault. But there's a freedom to be found when we start to face this. There's a part of the spiritual work of God in your life that cannot happen until you face this. Now, they'll talk about this out in the world, and there is a freedom to be found, but there are two types of freedoms as you face the past. We're going to go with the guide of Christ. We're not just doing pop psychology, because there is a fake kind of freedom out there. You do this type of work so that I can blame. It was my mother's fault. It was my father's fault. It was this person's fault. I got this damage because of them. That's fake freedom. You'll never escape it, because it results in bitterness and anger. And when it's full-blown, it leads to amputation. Boy, is that a famous thing out there right now, right? All I got to do is label you toxic, and I'm justified in cutting you out. There's no freedom in that. That's a fake freedom. It's doing the right thing of facing the past, but doing it in all the wrong ways. Jesus invites us into a different process that goes, you know what, this is not about blame, this is about understanding. Understanding the type of life my mom was probably raised in. Now that I replay the stories that were regaled, that we talked about and laughed about, to go, oh my goodness, what was it to be a young girl growing up in a household that was 20 times more violent than I ever saw? To get to a place of going, I understand what's going on with me now. I'm connecting a few dots. I'm just not left with this mess and down below. I get how I got here. And so it leads me to compassion and forgiveness. My mom and my sister have had a tumultuous relationship, and that's not details for me to share, but I was so proud of my sister as she has fought through her life, untangling a lot of the knots that I have had to untangle. She came to a place where she was able to sit down with our mom and not just go, I forgive you, but she owned her stuff and said, you know what, this is the type of daughter I have been, and I'm sorry. My mom did not apologize for all the lists that probably she should have, but there was reconciliation in that moment, because my sister had finally faced some things. And instead of going, this makes me bitter and angry and she would have been justified, she goes, no, what Christ asked me to do is to bring forgiveness into this situation. I don't need to demand it from you. I need to stop. I need to walk in that. Because when I do, then I can finally be responsible. Instead of blaming and finding someone responsible, now that I understand, I can be responsible for me. I know some of my ideas have been mixed up from my experiences, and I don't have to live there anymore. I can choose something else. 1 Peter puts it this way: for you know that it was not with perishable things like silver or gold or success or sex or anything this world can offer you that you were redeemed. Redeemed is not checking in a coupon. It is escaping something. It is being bought out of something. It is being broken out of a prison that you're in, a slavery that is holding you, that you cannot escape on your own, and a friend or a family an ally comes and breaks you out, says, I'm going to pay that debt. You are released from this. That's what redemption means. You are redeemed what? From the empty way of life handed down to you from your ancestors. I don't have to live like them. I don't have to walk in that brokenness. I get the effects that it has, and I'm in process. We're all in process. But I'm not chained to that wall. And I can't do all this. This is Christ redeems us. This is God's work in our life. In God the Father's great mercy, he's given us a new birth, a new start, a new type of family. Not because we're getting rid of the old family, not because we're cutting off and amputating them. We have compassion, we have forgiveness, we have reconciliation, restoration as it's possible. But man, I belong to a different family, a spiritual family. It gives me a living hope, a way to live. It gives me an inheritance, something that I receive that isn't damaged and broken, that isn't temporary, that isn't fake. He explains it a little bit later. He says, finally, all of you, this is what it is to be part of this family. Be like-minded. Be sympathetic. Love one another. Be compassionate, humble. Be emotionally healthy and mature. Don't repay evil with evil. Don't put people through walls because they splashed your dishes. On the contrary, you know what it is to be a son and daughter of the King? You repay evil with blessing. You operate completely differently than anything this world has seen, anything that you have been taught, because you were called. You were given a new birth that you might inherit a blessing. You have been redeemed from the life that's been handed down to you. Are you ready to do the work? It's not a magic wand. You've got to do the work. Those of you in small groups, lean into the work this week. Let's uncover this so that God can do his deep work. This is the quote from the book. Discipleship requires two things: putting off those sinful patterns of our family of origin, the things that we were taught and trained and said, this is right and it's not right, as well as relearning how to do God's life God's way in his family. That's the purpose of us together. As the band comes, so we're going to sing, and you know, this can stir up a lot of stuff. And so we're going to have prayer people up front. We got the altar. And I know, right? Your 10 commandments just kicked in. Don't you embarrass the family and go pray. Don't you reveal that anything is wrong. Don't you do that. How dare you bring shame to the family. You participate in a different family where there is no shame in Christ. You go, my heart needs a surgeon. And so I run to the Father. You want to pray? Come pray. You want to be prayed with? There will be people up front. You can pray in your seats too. That's all right. It is with you. But there is something about moving and receiving and saying, I want your deepest work ever. Redeem me from what has been handed down to me. Let's sing.